Good morning. Here we are in the wake of the historic, seminal Stevens case that was argued yesterday before the United States Supreme Court by the ACLU, which gives us a particular point of pride, but on behalf of so many organizations that are fighting all day, every day for equality, for fairness, for dignity, for respect. And for an economy that works for everybody. So today, in the wake of that seminal moment in our nation's history and our jurisprudence, we wanted to just gather together with some key leaders for the fight for equality here in Nebraska and talk a little bit about what does this case mean for you? What does this case mean for your family? What does this case mean for our community? And then we also want to open up a conversation about where we are in Nebraska on ensuring basic employment protections for everybody in our community and what people can do, activists in their own right, online or engaging with elected officials or speaking out in the public square to make a difference and to continue to work on these issues. So maybe we'll just kind of kick it off and turn it over to one of Equality's favorite champions. We've got State Senator Adam Morfeld here. Adam, tell us a little bit, what's going on with employment protections in the Nebraska legislature? We're in the interim period right now. We're getting ready for session to kick off again in January 2020. What's happening with the bills in the legislature?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, since we're in the interim, things have slowed down a little bit. That being said, I'll tell you that there is still a ton of excitement to make sure that we have LGBT protections in Nebraska. There are plenty of senators. In fact, oftentimes we have to all talk and say who's introducing what because everybody wants to introduce everything. And so we've been working on being really coordinated as forward-thinking senators on this issue, making sure that we introduce a wide variety of LGBT protections, but also understanding that we are making progress, that every year we get a few more senators on board with being public and supporting LGBT protections. And quite frankly, it's because family members, friends, Nebraskans reach out to senators and tell them their story and who they are and that they deserve dignity and protections just like all other Nebraskans. And so that continuous outreach from all of you and from supporters of the ACLU and supporters of OutLink are so incredibly important because they're moving the needle each and every year. It's not getting us to that magic 33 out of 49 votes. Yeah. Not yet, but every year we make progress, and I think we're going to get there one day.
Oh, that's a great update. Well, Abbi, let's flip it over to you. Tell us about what's going on at OutNebraska and how you're really receiving the wake of these arguments at this historic moment with the Stevens case being argued yesterday, and then how folks can plug in to all of the exciting things happening in your organization to join the fight.
We are really encouraging people to build community at this time. It is so important to take care of yourself in the wake of these arguments, to be aware that trying to read the tea leaves is really difficult, and we're not going to have a decision until June. It's a long haul, so we're just asking people to be engaged with their community. Definitely save the date for March 11th. In the interim is an excellent time to share your stories, but if you are someone who wants some support in doing that, we're planning a legislative day, March 11th, and so there'll be a group of folks coming to the Capitol to share stories. We'll be doing a little storytelling training in the morning before we head over to the Capitol, and we know that it is the personal stories of people that changes hearts and minds, and so just really encouraging people to do that. But every day we're looking for folks who want to get involved. We have some exciting things on the horizon for us in terms of engaging with the business community and trying to move the needle in that way. And so we're looking for folks who want to be involved, who want to engage with us and build community. So
those are great opportunities for people to get involved, and I think really complement the strategic effort, right? We know from the polling that the vast majority of Nebraskans all across this state stand with us in support of workplace fairness. and we continue to pick up supportive senators in the legislative arena, but we're not quite at that tipping point. And
We'll
how
get
do we
there.
get there?
We're gonna get
there by sharing our personal stories and changing hearts and minds. So, Natalie, I want to flip it to you. Personal reflections that you might have about, just watching this case move through the courts, kind of what you're feeling and thinking about as you read the headlines. What's in your heart and mind today?
These cases touch trans people pretty close to home. Laverne Cox was on MSNBC the other day, and she mentioned that this case may be even more important than marriage equality for trans people especially, and I think that she's right. Trans people are targeted especially by employment and housing discrimination, and we don't have legal protections against those things. And the way that the Trump administration is arguing right now in front of the Supreme Court that we should not have those things is by arguing that sex discrimination should be legal. They're trying to frame the argument legally by saying that all sex discrimination should be legal. So if you're a woman who dresses a little bit masculine for someone's opinion, you could be fired for that if the Trump's argument is successful. Or if you're a man who identifies as a man and sometimes wears eye makeup, you could possibly be fired because of someone's stereotype of you if the Trump's argument is successful. So this is about us. The argument is centered on the trans community, but it affects all Americans. And right now, trans people are hurting. It's a emotional time for us. And I think it's important that all of us remember to take care of ourselves, but to also really be aware that there are wonderful people in our state, Nebraska, and in our country right now, all over our country, arguing in front of our state legislature, arguing in front of our federal government in favor of us and making sure that we have legal protections just like every other American. And a couple of these people are sitting right here with me. I think that it's also important for all Americans to understand that even though most people believe that people like myself should have legal protections against discrimination, there are many people who believe that we are not discriminated against. Even though they believe that we shouldn't be, they don't believe that it actually happens. And there are many more who think that we do have those protections when we don't. And so it's extremely important for all of us, people like myself, all people in the LGBTQIA+ umbrella, and all of our allies, to speak with your friends, speak with your family, speak with your neighbors about what it is that we have to deal with in society and how important it is that we get legal equality. And make sure that they are calling their state senators, make sure that they are calling their federal representatives and telling them all of the time. Because as Adam has said, and as Danielle has experience with, the more people call our elected representatives and tell them how important an issue is, the more likely they are to support it. And that's how we get progress on this issue. And one other thing, on October 20th at the Zoo Bar here in Lincoln, there is going to be a benefit stand-up comedy event for OutNebraska. So if you would like to come and have some laughs and have some levity in this really stressful time, and also do something that would help this cause, come to the Zoo Bar and have some laughs and buy a ticket that will help out Nebraska. And
That's so sweet.
That's great. Well, I think you really put so many important points on the table there, and talking about, obviously this is a seminal moment for the LGBTQ community and everybody who champions equality in their hearts and in their minds and in their work. But there are really broad implications about this case and the decision before the court that I think it's so important to really tease out, to let our fellow Nebraskans know that this has the possibility to impact us all, regardless of our gender identity or our sexual orientation, and that this is really about gender equity at its heart. And is something that the Congress, that the legislature, and that the courts, have prohibited for decades.
Mm-hmm.
So just if folks want to just weigh in and share some thoughts on that, I mean, not to get too legalistic, but maybe I can get some CLEs for this. There's a really important case in Supreme Court jurisprudence called the Price Waterhouse case, interpreting this existing gender protection under Title VII, wherein it was about sex stereotyping for professional expression in one of the big accounting firms, where a female partner was denied advancement because some other coworkers thought that she dressed and acted too masculine, whatever that might mean. And the court was clear and swift in saying, no, that is prohibited under existing law. And so really looking at this case in a similar light and kind of teasing out what that means for all Nebraskans. I'm so glad that you teed that up, Natalie. Abbi, do you want to weigh in, or Adam?
Well, I definitely think that everything could be on the line, right? It isn't just that, and that's one of the things people sometimes forget. It's not just an LGBTQIA plus issue, right? It really is an issue about how we express ourselves in everyday life. So I could be wearing what I'm wearing today, which is a blazer and a jacket. Someone says that's not feminine enough. And regardless of my sexual orientation, I could be fired in certain jobs, right? And that's what's at risk. No matter how the court rules, we really need to pass laws. We need to continue working in the State House. We need to continue working at the federal level. We need clear and express protections. And so it's an issue that can touch everyone, and so it's an issue that everyone should be involved in.
Yeah, absolutely. Adam, do you want to weigh in?
Yeah,
on some of those ideas?
I think that, if we're not protecting the dignity and the personal choices of everyone, then we're all at risk of having our rights being violated. Whether you're a white straight male like me, or LGBTQI, Nebraskan, I think that we all benefit from having our human dignity and our, and who we are, and being able to express who we are in our own way protected. Whether it be in the workplace, in the public sphere, whatever the case may be. And that's really what's at stake here. And that has really broad implications, and it also has narrow implications.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing that I think is really exciting about how we can illustrate the support growing across the political spectrum for fairness and for equality is the fact that, longtime advocates for basic fairness are now flanked and complemented by almost an across-the-board support from traditional business leaders and business groups who are weighing in, who are saying, we stand for equality, we stand for fairness because it's good for business. It's good for the bottom line. It's good for the economy. We all do better when everybody has the chance to work at their highest and best purpose to advance our community interests. So when you see those allies join with us and the faith community as well, it's just such an exciting moment, I think, to really build on that momentum. But Abbi, I know you're working a lot with the business community at OutNebraska. Do you want to share some of those ideas about some of those exciting developments?
Well, we're getting ready to launch a project where we'll be working with individual businesses to sign a pledge that they support non-discrimination. And we haven't landed on a name for the project yet. There's a couple different things we want to do.
Source some ideas.
Yeah.
You
have a naming contest. Oh,
about what we should call that
project.
Send me your ideas. But the idea is that the chambers, the Lincoln Chamber and the Omaha Chamber, have been supportive of non-discrimination, but not every business belongs to the chamber. And also, we think there are individual businesses who would speak up if they could be in coalition with other companies. And so what we're going to try to do is build that coalition, and to do it on a statewide basis. So we're looking at efforts, and we're looking for people who want to have those conversations, right? So who want to be involved by making calls to businesses and sitting down to have coffee and talk about what this looks like and what the pledge is, and really getting folks involved that way.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Natalie, I see you want to jump in. Do you have some ideas about the business front?
I'm really glad that we're talking about the economic angle of equality.
Absolutely.
National businesses more and more are being run by millennial people. Millennial people are very open and accepting of people like me, and they hire people like me, and they don't want to locate their businesses in places that discriminate against people like me, because they want their employees to feel comfortable in the places that they're locating their businesses. So states and cities that have passed LGBT non-discrimination laws have seen an influx in businesses locating there, in jobs being located there, in increased economic activity happening there. And that benefits everyone. And so it's really important that that members of the Lincoln City Chamber of Commerce, that business leaders all over the state of Nebraska begin to understand that the people that we are educating with our tax dollars in our public education system are going to grow up wanting to work in safe and inclusive places. And if we want to keep the workforce that we are spending a lot of money to educate very effectively in this state, we're going to have to figure out some ways to incentivize them staying here. And it's going to have to deal with a lot more than just property taxes. It's going to have to deal with the society that we are building around those employees and those workers. So yeah, the LGBT equality, it isn't just about making life more equitable and fair for people like me. It's about making the economy work better for everyone. It's about making sure that everyone is more safe and is living in a more inclusive society, and that benefits all Nebraskans and all Americans. Absolutely. And that's an important part to remember about this.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I can add one more thing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so interesting to me that so the biggest issue that we tackle within the legislature, and that everybody talks about, whether it's conservative or liberal or anything in between or outside, is how do we retain and attract Nebraskans?
Yes.
Mostly young Nebraskans, but all Nebraskans of all ages that are either skilled or unskilled, and want to be able to thrive and succeed in our community, in our state, in our nation. And this goes to the core of that. How are we going to be a welcoming state that can fulfill all these different workforce challenges that we have to, rise all tides, all boats, and make it so that we have a strong tax base, so that people can pay less taxes. You got more people in the state, you can grow pay a little, grow the economy. And so the number one issue that we always talk about is recruiting, retaining Nebraskans. And we know that having an open state in terms of strong civil liberties and the ability for everyone to thrive helps create that environment. And so I think that in particular, there's been some businesses and some leaders across the state that have seen that and sign on to these pledges, but I think that we have to get even more grassroots. What are we doing to talk to our family members who run small businesses to get them to sign on? So I think it's great.
Just the big businesses.
It can't be just the big businesses. And there's a bunch of small businesses, but how are we reaching out from a grassroots perspective? So if you're thinking about what to do, call your senator, and if you're comfortable in a place where you can tell your story or somebody else's story, do that. But then number two, who do you know that owns businesses or are, in a leadership position in a business, whether big or small, and what are you doing to help connect them with people like Abbi to sign that pledge? That's another thing I think we can all do.
That's great.
Yeah, absolutely.
Go have those conversations.
Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground in terms of, just taking a look at what the case is about, talking about even the broader implications that are before the court and our communities, dependent upon whichever way the court may decide to rule. It's definitely a law school 101 kind of rule that you never guess what a court's going to do or when they're going to do it, even though we're all trying to glean clues from the oral argument transcripts that came, read the tea leaves that came into the public purview yesterday. And I think that we've also done a really good job of saying, no matter what happens with this case, when the decision comes down next June, we got a lot of work to do. And we can make a positive difference right here, right now, in Nebraska and beyond to ensure explicit protections, workplace protections, public accommodations protections, housing and healthcare protections that affirm the basic dignity of all of our fellow Nebraskans. So maybe we can just do like a quick couple little clips about we've already covered some of it. We got a comedy event coming up. We've got a lobby day coming up. This great time to start talking to your networks and talking to your senators. Yeah, absolutely. Sign those petitions, make those phone calls, and say thank you to leaders like this who work all day,
And
every
to you.
day,
And you.
for a better Nebraska and a better tomorrow. So it doesn't come easily. Sometimes it's really personally very difficult and painful. So know that we love you and we all love each other.
And we love you.
And we love
all of
you.
you.
We love all of our beautiful supporters.